The founder of chip giant TSMC says he supports the United States' restrictions on Chinese tech. Honduras' foreign minister says mounting foreign debt is behind his country's plan to cut ties with Taiwan. North Korea fires an intercontinental ballistic missile just hours before a major summit between South Korea and Japan. Plus, the army has now stepped in to help combat the ongoing water crisis in the south. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. The billionaire founder of Taiwanese chip giant TSMC says he supports the US's efforts to rein in China's access to semiconductor tech. Morris Chang made the comment in Taipei on Thursday. He was joined by the author of Chip War, a new book that describes the fierce global battle for chip supremacy. Stash Butler has this report.
Chips are the new oil, at least according to Chris Miller, the author of a best-selling book called Chip War. And at a forum in Taipei, he said in this critical industry, there's one country leading the way.
As we look at the big transformative shifts in the international economy and politics and society and technology, my argument to you is that we have to put semiconductors at the center of that analysis, and that any analysis of semiconductors has to put Taiwan on the center of the map.
And at the center of Taiwan's chip dominance, one company called TSMC. TSMC's rise to the top of global semiconductor production has been nothing short of astronomical. Founded in 1987, it's now worth about $500 billion US, and it dominates the production market. In the last quarter of 2022, TSMC controlled about 60% of the market among semiconductor foundries, well ahead of Korean rival Samsung and Taiwanese foundry UMC. Even the company's founder, Morris Chang, did not expect that kind of a rise.
I just wanted to survive. I just wanted the company to survive.
That dominant position has attracted international attention.
The forum here in Taipei is highlighting the critical role that TSMC plays in the world's chip industry, and that one company's strength has turned Taiwan into a focus of a global struggle.
The US and China increasingly view advanced semiconductors as a critical resource, and Washington does not want to rely on others to get them.
The slumbering giant that is America has finally awakened to the challenge that we face from the People's Republic of China, their aggressive posture in the region, and the potential they would have of cutting off our access to advanced semiconductors.
The US has moved to cut off China from the global chip supply chain. To do that, it needs support from other countries, including Taiwan. And despite the potential damage to TSMC's business, the company's founder says he supports those moves.
I really have no quarrel with that. In fact, I might say I support it.
But separation from China is not easy. The economies on the two sides of the Taiwan Strait are deeply tied. Add to that the fact that China claims Taiwan as its own and regularly flies warplanes near its airspace, and Taiwan's difficult position becomes clear. For Taiwan's vice president, preserving Taiwan's democracy in the face of that aggression is as important to TSMC as it is to the country.
因为民主对台积电这种国际级的公司、创新研发不断的公司，就像空气、水、阳光一样的重要。
TSMC is the jewel in Taiwan's industrial crown and the source of much of its wealth. Its rise has been critical for putting the country on the map in an age of intense tech competition. And as the war over chip supremacy continues, the company will be vital in ensuring Taiwan keeps its edge. Alex Chen and Stash Butler in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
It's not about ideology, it's about money. That's the message from the Foreign Minister of Honduras, who says economic reasons are behind its decision to ditch Taiwan as a diplomatic ally. The decision leaves Taiwan with just 13 formal allies. John Van Trieste reports.
The flag flying atop this building will soon be coming down. This is Taiwan's soon-to-be former embassy in the Central American country of Honduras. The country's president floated the idea of cutting ties with Taiwan even before taking office. Now, more than a year into her term, she's making the move. Honduras will now recognize China instead. China claims Taiwan as part of its territory, and in its campaign to isolate Taiwan, it makes countries pick a side. Honduras says mounting foreign debt is behind the switch. The country owed around $8 billion in the last quarter of 2022. Its debts to Taiwan amount to $600 million. Analysts say that while Taiwan offers a range of assistance to allies, such debts aren't unusual.
When we have diplomatic ties, a lot of developing countries need financial help, and we sometimes give money just as assistance, but other times we give them as loan, and a lot of times this low interest loan they cannot repay. That's why you will have accumulate debt.
Honduras asked to renegotiate this debt and for Taiwan to double its yearly aid to $100 million. But it says the results of this discussion were less than fruitful.
El país se enfrenta a una crisis muy compleja en varias de las temáticas y por lo tanto la presidenta, después de un año de estar en estas conversaciones con Taiwán, pues no se recibieron las respuestas esperadas.
Taiwan says it promised to help the country's development within its means, but it says it won't engage in a battle of dollar diplomacy with China. The foreign ministry said, quote, "We have striven to maintain friendly relations with Honduras and have done our utmost to secure them, but we will not engage in a financial competition with China. At the same time, we remind the Honduran government that even though it suffers from problems of debt, it should by no means do something that will backfire and allow itself to fall into a Chinese debt trap." The switch is a blow for Taipei, which will now have 13 diplomatic allies, most of them in Latin America, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. These allies speak on Taiwan's behalf in organizations like the UN, where Taiwan is barred due to Chinese pressure. Honduras says the switch is not about ideology, but some of the country's analysts are skeptical.
No, para China el interés es meramente político. Es quitarle otro aliado a Taiwán y hacerle frente a Estados Unidos. Eso es lo que sucede. Miren, nosotros somos parte de las piezas de un ajedrez internacional, pero nosotros no lo entendemos y creemos que somos grandes jugadores si establecemos relaciones con China. Estamos siendo utilizados por China.
Back in Taiwan, the more than 100 Honduran students on Taiwan government scholarships are worried about the future, especially given what's happened to students from other former Taiwan allies when relations were cut.
And I know how hard they've worked for this, like for having a scholarship, and this is out of their hands. So the future is uncertain. Like, for example, I've seen previous examples with Nicaragua. They need to start all over again their studies, or they just continue their studies in China. But however, time is something you don't get back.
The loss of Honduras as an ally comes as an embarrassment to Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen ahead of her expected April trip to visit other allies in Central America, where her mission of shoring up ties will now have an added urgency. Damon Lin, Louise Watt, and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
You heard in that report from Yen Zhanshan, an expert on international relations from National Zhengzhou University. TaiwanPlus reporter Louise Watt spoke to him further about the impact of Honduras' decision to cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan.
Honduras is breaking ties with Taiwan. What effect will this have on US influence in the Latin American region?
How come this country are so close to the U.S., have such a long tradition with the U.S., and U.S. has a big policy of Monroe Doctrine for such a long time, yet cannot stop them from shifting their diplomatic recognition from Taipei to Beijing. So China might be complacent now, saying, yeah, we would be able to hit America in its backwater, just like America is trying to do the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy to contain China. So it is kind of a very strong response from China, just like what China had with the Iran and Saudi Arabia reestablishing relations. So China is not going to be a passive international player. It's actively involving a more international affair than we will assume before, because China always talk about no intervention of any country's domestic affair, respect every country's sovereignty. So which means China was not able to do a lot of things before. But now I think they have done something that is beyond our expectation.
Honduras says part of the reason is financial. What's happened in the cases of other countries like Nicaragua who have switched allegiance from Taipei to China? Do they suddenly get a lot of investment?
Yeah, most of the country will get the immediate one because Taiwan's financial assistance sometimes in the form of scholarship in agricultural teams and medical teams are good for the local people. But when you have election, the president would like to have something to show for. So China's infrastructure building, with the very visible buildings, with the very, very visible transportation infrastructure, it's always good for any kind of incumbent president to run for, saying, show having a opening ceremony for some of this infrastructure that will help. So that's, I think, the reason for most of the country that switch, and we find that some of the developing countries switching diplomatic tie or having diplomatic tie with China and borrowing money to have infrastructure, but then ended up not able to pay back. That would be the danger of having this kind of debt.
That was Yin Khvat, an expert on international relations from National Zhengzhou University, speaking with our reporter Louise Watt. Honduras' decision to break ties with Taiwan has made headlines around the world, and predictably, Taiwan's political parties have had differing reactions.
这个要检讨到我们整体的外交政策，因为当我们对不是邦交国，我们所付出的如果是远大于我们的邦交国的时候，在他们眼里看来，其实可能对我们可能也会表达失望就像我们之前给立陶宛，我们高达12亿美元这样子的一个金额。 其实，在我们所有邦交国看来，大概都不是滋味。那未来是不是还会有这样的效应也是要关注。
If Honduras does break relations with Taiwan, it will become the 9th country to do so under President Tsai Ing-wen. And that record has been used to attack the current government under the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. Opposition Kuomintang lawmaker Ma Wen-jun told TaiwanPlus she believes that a focus on building stronger ties with non-allied countries, such as Lithuania, has hurt Taiwan. But DPP lawmaker He Zhiwei says Taiwan's diplomatic space is constantly being squeezed by China, so our diplomats have a difficult job. I'm sure the executive branch and our diplomats will do their best to maintain friendship with Honduras. Taiwan has a good relationship with the US, Japan, UK, Australia and other democracies, so in the future Taiwan's international relations will keep moving forward. North Korea has fired an intercontinental ballistic missile just hours before a major summit between South Korea and Japan. Japan said the missile appeared to fly higher than 6,000 kilometers for more than an hour. It landed in the sea between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. Pyongyang has already fired multiple shorter-range missiles this week. The launches are meant to signal the country's anger over ongoing military exercises by South Korea and the United States. Taiwan's military kicked off a series of live-fire drills on the offshore Penghu island chain on Wednesday. The exercise is aimed at testing the Penghu Defense Command's readiness to defend against a potential amphibious invasion. During the drills, howitzers and tanks fired at oncoming targets launched from the air and sea. The islands are widely considered as the first line of defense against a potential attack from China, which has been ramping up its military pressure against Taiwan in recent years. Taiwan's defense ministry says it decided to hold this kind of exercise on Penghu each month. The army has been called in to help preserve water in Taiwan's largest reservoir. It's the latest emergency response to be implemented as a severe drought continues to hit cities and communities in the south of the country. Joyce Zheng reports.
Southern Taiwan's water crisis is getting worse. Water levels here in Zhenwen, the country's largest water reservoir, have fallen to around 12%. this leaves its main recipients, the southern cities Jiayi and Tainan, in a very tight spot. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Zhenwen Reservoir sparked major concerns after water levels fell to 19%, an amount officials said could only last for 20 days. Now the troops have been called in. On Wednesday, the army began dredging sediment from the bottom of the reservoir. It's hoped that removing the sediment will help to preserve a bit more water. The plan is to prepare the reservoir to hold as much water as possible in the lead up to Taiwan's monsoon season, which typically runs between May and June.
目标量是定在30万立方公尺，那工期是从今天开始到5月底或6月初，反正雨来之前，它能够清多少就尽量清。
But in the meantime, local farmers and the surrounding nature continue to struggle. Any other time, and these ginkgo trees would usually be in full bloom by now. But this year, many have died because of the drought.
这个时候应该也要长新芽了也还没长。那我们的茶树比较严重，茶树的话，它的发芽率相当的少。
你看现在到现在都还没长新芽。
Residents in the southern cities are already living with reduced water pressure as part of the emergency response. But people living in the nearby mountain regions have it even worse. Many rely on rainwater collecting in the surrounding lakes. One such example is Jiaming Lake, also known as the Tears of Angels. Now locals barely have enough water to drink and cook with. Hikers visiting the mountains are also reminded to bring their own water. Officials continue to urge the public to use water sparingly while hoping that the situation will improve very soon. Ethan Chen and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, the number of critically endangered Formosan landlocked salmon has hit a record high.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus. For more great stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. European banking giant Credit Suisse has become the latest financial institution to find itself in trouble. The bank's shares plunged by as much as 30% on Wednesday, with other banking stocks also finishing in the red. The sell-off began after Credit Suisse's largest shareholder said it wouldn't be investing any more money. The banking group made a loss of almost $8 billion last year. The Swiss central bank has pledged to provide emergency funding if needed. But Credit Suisse's chairman has assured investors that its finances are stable. This is the latest in a series of banking crises to occur over the past week, following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in the US. Higher interest rates around the globe have seen the value of many banks' investments fall, leaving them more exposed to financial shocks. For more on the fallout from the latest banking crisis, Taiwan Plus reporter Bing Wang spoke to C.Y. Huang, the president of FCC Partners and Investment Bank.
Can you explain why these banks are failing?
You know, Silicon Valley Bank is a fairly niche-focused bank. It is a bank focusing exclusively on technology industry based in Silicon Valley. You know, as its name suggests, you know, it is in Silicon Valley where there are a lot of high-tech company and startup. So its clients are mostly these startup company as well as the bigger ones like Meta in the technology industry. So it is a growing industry. In the past, you know, the previous 2 years, very good. But recently, as we all know, you know, there probably too much expansion in the previous 2 years during COVID-19. So technology industry is suffering.
So how is this affecting the world economy?
I think that it will affect the world economy. So people say that there will be little impact. It's simply not true. I think the U.S. government at least did one thing right, which is to guarantee that the deposit and to do it quickly. So basically try to calm investor down. Calm the market down. One thing we know for sure is that the American U.S. market is no longer the safe harbor, of the global money in the last 2-3 years, especially during Russia-Ukraine war. People say, oh, the safest place in the world is the U.S. So when other countries, other markets suffer, when Russia suffer, when Asia suffer, when China suffer, forgot about the risk in the U.S. People think that the U.S. has no risk, zero risk. U.S. is the safest place. But then we now know it is not true.
Is this likely to affect Taiwan and the East Asian region?
I think it will affect, Taiwan. But the thing is that in Taiwan, we always, the government that is always trying to come down, say, oh, don't worry, there's no big deal. U.S. got already stepping. So what the government trying to do is to tell investors, tell everyone, say, not to worry at all. And number two, our people, are so domestically focused. They are not focusing on the thing on the international. Taiwan, the very large part of the economy is our technology. So our 1/3 of the economy is driven by technology company, TSMC, Foxconn, etc. And then they are almost every technology you can think of, especially the manufacturing one, are linked with Taiwan. So if the technology industry and the startup in the U.S. are not doing so well, eventually it will hurt Taiwan.
That was FCC Partners President C.Y. Huang speaking to TaiwanPlus reporter Bing Wang. The government is laying the ground for a tax rebate cash handout. From next Wednesday, citizens and permanent residents can register to each receive a $200 payment. The money will be made available in several ways, including deposited directly into bank accounts, withdrawn from ATMs, or picked up from post offices. The government is aiming to issue the funds before the end of October. The rebate is part of a $12 billion post-pandemic relief package, which still requires lawmakers' approval. The number of legal complaints involving online sexual crimes has jumped. That's after 2 new amendments targeting these sorts of criminal acts took effect. Crimes that are covered include making deepfake pornography, filming, sharing or downloading sexual images taken without consent, and using images of children inappropriately. Victims can now take legal action to have their images taken off the internet. Taiwan's health ministry says that in the months since these amendments took effect, legal complaints from victims have tripled, reaching close to 250. It says 65% of victims over the past month have been women, most of them aged 18 to 25. The ministry also says the average wait time for having an image removed is 3 days. Taiwan's high-speed rail is getting some upgrades. After 2 previous deals failed, the company's board approved the purchase of 12 new trains from Japan for around $930 million. The new trains have a more streamlined design. They'll also include charging facilities at every seat, double-deck luggage racks, and full-color LCD screens. The trains will enter service in 2027 at the earliest. There's good news for Taiwan's indigenous salmon species. Once almost extinct, their numbers have not only recovered, but have hit a record high. Our reporter Eric Gao has more.
The Formosan landlocked salmon is considered a national treasure, but one that used to be very rare. Found in mountain streams in central Taiwan, pollution devastated the species, leaving only 200 in the wild in 1995. This made it one of the rarest species of fish in the entire world. Since then, Xueba National Park has been working hard to conserve the salmon, and its efforts have paid off.
连续放流3年，每一年有1000尾的那个樱花过母龟，然后经过自然的繁衍，目前已经达到7000多尾。
The salmon is found in the Hehuan and Qijiawan rivers. Their populations have reached a combined 15,000. That's a record high and 60 times what it used to be around 3 decades ago. But while the number is encouraging, Conservationists worry about how resilient the population is.
真正的考验还没来，也就是说，这个台风的影响最近都没有什么台风，是不是能够经得起考验？我觉得还是需要未来再继续观察。
Conservationists will keep working to boost salmon numbers to ensure a stable, genetically diverse population. But only when the salmon are self-sustaining and no longer endangered will this national treasure be truly protected. Rick Yi, Irene Wu, and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
A banyan tree that was given special status by the Taidong County government is believed to be sick. Villagers say it has been infected for a while as its dense branches and leaves have become dry and thin. Scale insects have been found feeding on its leaves. This causes them to yellow, and with heavy infestations, the tree may die. Taiwan currently has 4,200 protected trees, but this sacred specimen is also the center of local beliefs. Villagers say it is the last old tree in the area. They hope plant doctors can provide treatment as soon as possible. Taidong officials say they're bringing in outside help.
介壳虫的危害之外，我们也担心说会不会是有那个核根病的情形，所以我们也有已经委托那个屏科大找个时间来帮我们做取样。
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, we leave you with images of the first winged aircraft to land on the helipad of Dubai's iconic Burj Al Arab Hotel. I'm Yin Khvat. Take care. See you next time.